As promised, we're back with another video to help you improve your squats. Last time we looked at ankle mobility. Today we are diving in to hip mobility. Let's do it. So as I explained in the last video, there's two main areas that we find are real problems for people with their squats. Either they can't get low enough in their squats, it doesn't feel comfortable, or they just can't move in the correct form or what feels comfortable to them. In the previous video, we talked through ankle mobility. That's your first point of call. If you've not seen that video, there'll be a tag up here or something. You can watch that first and then come back over here, because today we're looking at the next part of the chain and we're looking at hip mobility. So before I go any further, one thing I want to say is everybody's squat will look different. We have different biomechanics, different type areas on our body, different preferences. Some people will have a narrow stance squat. Some people will be very wide. Some people's toes will face forwards. Some people's toes will face out. There's not a right or wrong answer as long as we get you moving safely and what looks like a good safe squat for yourself. Now, how do I characterize tight hips? Tight hips for me is the inability to be able to get your butt and your hips in between your legs. So if you take a super narrow stance squat, like narrower than you're ever going to squat, what you'll find is as you try and come down, your thighs or your femurs, they kind of block your hips and they kind of put you out of position and make it very hard for you to get down. So if we step our feet just outside our hips, especially if we turn the toes out a little bit like I would in my squats, what that now does is it opens up the femurs, it opens up the legs, they move out of the way, allowing myself to drop down in between my hips for the squat, allowing me to get nice, good range of motion with an upright torso. Now, if you're finding that you're having to go really wide to get your squat and you still can't get down as low as you want, chances are you've got tight hips. Now, here are some mobility drills that you can use to help release off your hips. So we're going to start simply by mimicking the movement of a squat, but using a pole or a rig or anything upright that's sturdy to force yourself down into your squat position. By force yourself, I mean gradually ease yourself. I don't mean ram yourself into it. We don't want to pull any muscles here. What we're trying to do is we're trying to keep our ankle mobility good, so let the knees track forwards if they need to. We're trying to stop a butt wink, so we're stopping our hips from tipping under. We're keeping a nice flat back position, and we're trying to allow ourselves to get down into range. What you might find is you're very tight in your inner thighs and your upper hamstrings near your butt in this position here. These are the muscles that we are particularly going to be stretching out to allow us to reach depth in our squats. I would spend 20 seconds here, have a little move around, find where's tight for you. If there's somewhere you want to put a bit more pressure, don't be afraid to do that. But like I said, make sure you take it easy. So we've looked at mimicking the squat by using a squat rack like I did to kind of push ourselves down into a deep squat position, but at the same time giving us the time and the space to position ourselves in a correct position or fight for that position. That's really what we're doing in this video. Especially in drills like that, we're fighting for the correct position. This time, we're going to look at really opening the hips and allowing the hips to come forward. Real kind of easy drill this one, but it can be quite uncomfortable. So just go where it feels comfortable for you. You're going to come down onto your knees and on your elbows. You're going to widen your knees apart, basically mimicking a squat, probably a little bit wider than you would go with a squat, depending on how restricted you are. Then you're going to start to send your bum back towards your heels. Now we're starting to look a bit more like a squat, but a very open squat. This, again, you will feel it in a similar kind of area. Once you've got a position that feels kind of tight and you feel a good stretch there, hold it for a bit. Once you're happy with your range and you feel good in that position, maybe try and release off the stretch a little bit and walk yourself into a kind of a kneeling upright position. So those first two exercises are going to work relatively similar areas of the hips. So now we're going to mix it up a little bit and we're going to look at a bit more rotation in the hips. So this is what we call a 1990 stretch. Basically, you're going to come in what would be a lunge position, but almost landscape, like bird's eye, so you're on the floor. What you're going to do, if you can do this without putting your hands down, amazing, but I don't expect that most people will be able to do this. And basically, we're going to keep that same leg position, 90 degrees at the knee, on both knees, and we're going to roll it over to the other side. Once you get to the other side, don't be afraid to do a little lean over that front leg. All that's going to do is stretch out your glutes and your piriformis muscles, which can be very tight in that hip area as well. And in fact, we're actually going to do some stretches for them next. So moving straight into that next stretch, we can do a piriformis or we can do a kind of a glute stretch here. Depending on the angle that you bring your heels towards your body will dictate what area of the muscles you're working. If you start to open your foot up and make more of a right angle, you're really going to hit into your glute maximus and your glute medius. If you want to progress this stretch, you can take an elevated platform like a bench and you can use this to create that external rotation in the hip and really stretch out those glute muscles. The last mobility exercise I want to do is one that I really love. And once you've kind of got some of those prerequisite kind of range of motion from these previous exercises, you can move into this one. And this is for the first time where you get to try and get yourself into a good or perfect squat position for you without any resistance or added pressure from pushing on a rack. We're going to take ourselves down in what feels like a good squat for us, being very mindful not to let that bum tip under, to keep good position. Then we're going to start to bring ourselves out of that squat, load the hamstrings, so we're going to stretch the hamstrings through this one. Then we're going to come up a little bit, keep that lovely flat lower back and reach down to our toes. We will feel a good pull in the hamstrings here. Now yes, I can reach my hands to the floor here, but look what happens if I do reach my hands to the floor. I lose my lower back, which means I take the pressure off stretching the hamstrings. So it's really important that we keep that lordotic, that lumbar part of the spine, nice and straight or with a normal curve. That's going to allow us to keep the pressure on the hamstrings and keep the stretch where we want it to be. These type of dynamic movements are going to get the joints moving lovely and smoothly, working on that stretching without being too kind of a rigorous a stretch. If you found this video helpful, please leave a comment below, maybe of what you'd like to see next or what you enjoyed. Give this video a massive thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't, and we'll see you in the next one.